Blog Talk Radio.
English Semyas 1. You have given me worries, my dear friend. 2. You shouldn't have refused to come to a meeting. 3. But not only was I worried but also my father and Quetzal as well as all the others. 4. Therefore, Father has also come along today. Billy, I understand you already, but there was simply no other option for me. I first had to have various things clarified before I could see you again. 1. If I understand correctly, you want to say with this that you would have never held to the contacts anymore if the things hadn't been clarified. Billy, exactly, so it was meant by me. Semyas 5. Are you serious? Billy, certainly. Semyas 6. You could have simply done that without further explanations? Billy, certainly. Semyas 7. I don't understand that. 8. Again and again, you give me new riddles. With this, the many animals and only a few human beings had really survived an earlier deluge which, like the biblical deluge, was Contact Reports 150. The events associated to the Ark actually took place about 100,000 years ago. The large four-footed animals could have never climbed down. How it all began, Billy. Edward Albert Meier's spiritual experiences can be traced all the way back to a time when he was 4 years old. Billy was living in a town called Niederflax/Berlac, Switzerland. Berlac is a municipality in Switzerland in the canton of Zurich, located in the district of the same name, and belongs to the Glatt Valley, German, Glattal. As a young boy at about 3 a.m. one morning, on the mild night in May, in the year 1931, he went outside and sat down on a bench and looked up at a beautiful starry night. Then he heard a voice in his head that said, "My life is made out of the love of creation." Also a short time later, words suddenly formed on Billy's lips, which said, "Since ancient times, you have lived among the stars," and suddenly Billy knew who he was, and what his mission was on this earth. And, suddenly, impulses came from somewhere, which I later recognized as impulses from the storage banks, and many good memories penetrated me and showed me the way I had to go in my life. Thus I also suddenly knew what space and time signify concerning the evolution of human beings in all things. For more information how it all began. The second part of that complete passage reads, I recognized that the light, which the stars emitted, was a light in the visible spectrum. However, the light of true love remained invisible, creational and for all great time, too. And, indeed, the beaming stars were there, which stirred in me an unfamiliar longing for the vast distance and faraway worlds. Then, words suddenly formed on my lips again, which said, "Since ancient times, you have lived among the stars," and suddenly I knew who I was, how I am and what my mission is on this earth. Billy knew at a very young age that everything which exists in the whole universe is a manifestation of the might and the infinite and true love of that mighty universal consciousness, which is simply called creation. Through this, I also learned to separate the wheat from the chaff and to look for the truth where it is basically to be found, namely, in one's own inner and innermost, as well as in one's own intellect, in one's own reason, one's own thoughts, contemplations and feelings. From this, developed the recognition and application of self-responsibility, and the recognition and fulfillment of responsibility in regard to fellow human beings, the worlds of plants and animals, and in regard to life, and the creational laws and recommendations. From this, developed the recognition and application of self-responsibility, and the recognition and fulfillment of responsibility in regard to fellow human beings, the worlds of plants and animals, and in regard to life, and the creational laws and recommendations. Billy looked up to the modesty of Pastor Rudolf Zimmermann. Billy learned to draw his own conclusions and make his own decisions. He also learned that he had to find the truth in his own thoughts and feelings. Contacts with Thoth. Billy's first teacher was an extraterrestrial man named Thoth. The first contact with Thoth occurred on Saturday, February 3, 1945, 12:10 p.m. Billy got a telepathic message to go out into the forest near his home in Bulac, Switzerland. Out of the sky came a silvery pear-shaped craft that sat down in a field nearby. Thoth, an extraterrestrial man of nearly 1,000 years. Thoth walked out of the craft and came over to young Billy. He took Billy by the hand and led him back to the ship. Thoth told him that his life would be difficult and that people would be blinded by hate and try to kill him. He was also told that his wife would turn against him as well. Billy was very wise for his age, and even older Earth humans would ask him for advice. Billy's words contain a vibration which has an inner power, which expresses his modesty and love for human beings. Billy has an inspirational power, which causes people to contemplate his words in a meditative power. Billy's real name is Edward, which means the guardian of the treasure. However, he is known worldwide as Billy or Beam. Billy has established himself in the background because the human beings of Earth create idols for themselves. He was told by Thoth not to go into the public too much and to remain in the background performing his mission in written form. The spiritual teaching that Billy brings is intended to transform the human beings in the world. The intention of the spiritual teaching is to awaken the human race out of their sleep. The teaching of the creational truth will become a worldwide movement that will bring peace, love, and freedom to the human beings of this world. Billy was told by Thoth that he would lose his left arm in an accident in the future. He was told that there would be attempts on his life, and that even his wife would turn against him and call him a hoaxer. Thoth taught Billy something called spiritual telepathy, which enabled young Edward to receive information from a spiritual plane called it.The. Billy was told that the current time is becoming epoch of great destruction and annihilation, which will start with criminal conduct of the Americans, who will drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Billy has come to clarify to all human beings the teaching of the truth, which will lead to the raising of the entire humanity on Earth. More information about Thoth's Pleiadians leave the Earth. Pleiadians left the Earth in 1995, and it is at that time that they reveal their true identity as the Pleiadians, and still they fly. Page 279. These Pleiadians live 80 light years beyond our Pleiades in a different space-time configuration. Between 1975 and 1986 there were 3 extraterrestrial bases on the Earth. The locations of these bases included Asia, North America, and Switzerland. The base in Switzerland had been on the Earth for more than 300 years. At that time there were 2,862 extraterrestrial humans on the Earth from 12 different races. During this 11-year period, 1975 to 1988, the extraterrestrials on Earth came from the Lyran, Vegan, Pleiadian systems and some from neighboring stars. There are 7.5 million human civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. And still they fly. Page 234. There were 79 pure human races created by creation. However, now there are incredible numbers of different human races. The exact number of races would be expressed by a number with 63 zeros. The lifespans of human beings on other worlds can extend to thousands of years and even much longer. The diversity of human beings in terms of their size is also incredible. There are people that are only 16 inches tall, and on other worlds there are people that reach 40 feet tall. The Pleiadians would not reveal the reason for leaving the Earth. However, it had something to do with an event that would take place in our near future. Creation. This section describes the term creation and calls on the following sources: the Amor Book of Books, Love Teaching, Letter No. 27. Contact Report 10. Contact Report 11. Billy answers question about the creation. Contact Report 18. The Talmud of Manual Teaching about Creation as universal self-awareness is the source of life of all creations within its domain, which is to say, within its universe. This universe, furthermore, is one of 10 to the 49th power other individual universes, which exist in infinite number, infinite space, and infinite time, as part of the highest form of creation, the absolute absolutum. Love Teaching Letter No. 27. Another great saying that comes from Love Teaching Letter No. 27, page 296. The love of creation is everywhere, because without it nothing at all would be able to exist. The individual should therefore be aware that he exists only through the love of creation, and that he carries this love also within himself. For more information read Love Teaching Letter No. 27, page 296. For more information read Fig Post about Love Teaching Letter No. 27. Each smallest plant, each ever so tiny animal was created in love by creation, each creation existing according to the same law of love. All life is in the absolute perfection that which it should be through the love of creation, and except for humans, every life form lives exactly by this creation's plan. Only humans have turned away from love and must now learn again what true love is. The infinite love of creation connects all life, because in all life this love lies hidden. The universe that we live in is the material manifestation of the wisdom of creation. Wisdom is a kind of knowledge that produces energy. When we produce wisdom and its associated energy, we help the whole creation to evolve. The purpose of human life is to acquire wisdom. Love and wisdom belong together, because creation and its laws are love and wisdom at the same time. Contact Report 10, line 62. Where there is wisdom and knowledge, there is love and cognition, and where there is cognition and love, there is creation. Growth within love and wisdom teach the human to recognize creation. The earth human speaks of a love that he does not know. Reverence, human of the earth, is the fundamental element of all existence, so it is therefore also the fundamental element of love itself, which is built on this all-embracing reverence. And since this is so in truth, it is also an impossible thing that love, once awakened and built up in truthfulness, can ever weaken again and become cold, or could transform into hate or be annihilated. Billy Meier, in his book, Law of Love. http://www.futuryoffmankind.co.uk/Billy_Meier/short_bibliography. Contact Report 10. Contact Report 10, line 241. And within each human the infinite is its seat. However, very few are able to recognize this. Those who are rich in spirit become an instrument, through which creation expresses the spiritual realm. Contact Report 10, line 244. Each human has within him a human spirit which is a tiny, holographic copy of creation. The creation is a neutral positive entity that is neither good nor evil. The creation builds universes as a part of its own evolution. When we die, the human spirit goes into the etheric energy band that exists around our planet. Our spirit spends time in this fine matter existence where the experiences of the previous lives are put together like pieces of a mosaic. At the appropriate time, the creation places our human spirit back into the body of child about 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg. A consciousness block comes down, which screens out most of our past life memories. Therefore, the great sages of all time say, the creative spirit is nearer to the human than his own breath. Contact Report 10, line 141. The human may not escape from this highest consciousness, for sooner or later, he surrenders to this creative reality, because it is the life of his life, the spirit of his spirit, the consciousness of his consciousness, the light of his light, the central thought force of all life, the existence that projects all human thinking by far, against which all power of the human material intellectual thinking sinks into absolute insignificance. Contact Report 11. Contact Report 11, line 132. Life is the teaching of the Spirit for the Spirit. Contact Report 11, line 83. The material intellect accepts the testimony of the material senses and their resulting conclusions, but rejects the deeper subjective intuitions. Contact Report 11, line 77. In the non-creational thinking human being, the material intellect, with all its given limitations, takes the highest place and thereby has as a consequence a tremendously slow development of the spirit and the consciousness. Therefore, in order to avoid the downfall of humanity in the new millennium, in the third millennium, it is necessary to find the way back to creational truth and the creational laws and recommendations, to follow them and therefore to make everything new with regard to learning and knowledge of the effective plan of creation. However, this can only happen if the human beings of Earth once again find and follow the roots of creational truth, and therefore the creational laws and recommendations. Creation is identical to universal consciousness, and exists in a double helix, egg-shaped configuration. Creation is spirit in its purest form, and immeasurable and its wisdom, knowledge, love and harmony and truth. As a whole, all of the creation universal consciousness is completely balanced. As a result, neither good nor evil exists in it, but only neutral balance. More info. The idea of creation is different than the idea of God delusion. For a more comprehensive look at creation, take a look at this page: http://www.futureofmankind.co.uk/Billy_Meier/creation. Our universe is shaped like an egg. If you were to cut it half and look inside, you would see a cross-section that would have concentric circles that would look very much like the rings in a tree trunk. The center contains the highest form of energy. The second, third and fourth layers serve different purposes and have a diminishing force of energy. The fifth layer is called the material belt and has all of the planets, stars and galaxies. The fifth band is the only band that contains material life forms. All of the other bands are different forms of spiritual energy that play a part in the development of the material band. The sixth band is used for space flight because time is different there and it allows the vast distances of space to be covered in very small amounts of time. The seventh band is called the push belt and exists to keep energies of other universes out of ours. Billy answers question about the universal material belt. Reader question: what is the universal material belt? Answer: the universal material belt is that part or belt, respectively, of the universe where matter exists, that is to say, planets, suns, galaxies, meteors, comets, gases, the entire dark matter and other things. All of these things exist only within this material belt, whereas no material whatsoever can be found in the internal and external belts, of which there exist 7 in all. In the so-called transformation belt, those forms develop from which matter develops that later exists in the material belt, hence in our visible Dern universe. This is the only portion of the universe we human beings are capable of seeing and exploring. We cannot see anything beyond it, for only total emptiness and blackness reign there. Absolutely nothing can be observed or detected, even with the best modern astronomical or other extraordinary tools available to us. The inner and outer belts beyond our visible material universe are practically endless, and are vast and dark if one excludes the innermost, radiant belt where the Big Bang originated approximately 36 trillion years ago. The after effects of the Big Bang continue to linger within the adjacent belt which, looking at it from Earth, is roughly 1.25 x 1015 light-years away at its closest proximity. Terrestrial scientists are incapable of peering and listening into these depths of space even with the most elaborate super devices. And this indicates precisely the degree of our scientists' narrow-mindedness, when they claim the universe is barely as old as the distance they can penetrate into the nearly endless space with their observation devices and contraptions. They do not have the remotest clue that the universe extends far beyond what they envision it to be, and that it has 6 additional belts in total, which are void of any coarse material or matter. Matter itself is in constant transformation within the material belt, and it is, therefore, subject to growth and disintegration processes. For this reason, matter can never be or become as old as the complete universe. At any given time, therefore, only young matter can be found in the material universe. Matter that can, at best, be a mere 40 or 45 billion years old, in a solid and compact state, while the age of the complete universe beyond the material belt, respectively our material universe, amounts to approximately 36 trillion years. Contact Report 18. Creation is infinite beauty, a beauty above all beauty. Whenever we see anything beautiful, we should trace that beauty back to creation itself. Contact Report 18. Line 16. Wherever he sees something beautiful, be it a flower, an animal or a human being, or anything else, he thus instantly brings it into association with the infinite beauty of creation itself. The human being can trace all of his joy back to the infinite joy of creation. All of the beauty of nature can be related back to beauty of creation. Every time the human being sees cognition reach expression, he can relate that back to the cognition of creation. Creation exists in every human being as a fragment of itself. Knowledge of the creation can help with inner peace, security, and wrong feelings. Our personality will become more powerful the more that we know about creation, and the more blessed will be our entire life and our work. Contact Report 18. Line 24. The more his intelligence is effective in this direction, the more it gains radiating light, the more powerful his personality becomes, and the more blessed his entire life and work. We should constantly contemplate the nature of creation. To many people the term creation is very uninteresting. Billions of people that are misled from religion do not understand this term creation. Experience reveals that creation is absolute certainty. Clarity of consciousness produces a fine sensitive feeling will rule the human being that lives for the spirit. The creational can take possession of the consciousness so his way of thinking is full of peace, happiness and strength. Accessing information from previous personality. The Talmud of Manual teaching about creation. The Talmud of Manual, Creation 1. Manual preached powerfully, saying, Behold, creation stands above humanity, above God and above everything. 2. It appears to be perfect by human comprehension, but this is not so. 3. Since creation is spirit and thus lives, even it must forever perfect itself. 4. But since it is one within itself, it can perfect itself by way of its own creations, through the generation of new spirit forms that dwell within humans, give them life, and evolve towards perfection through their learning. 5. The newly generated spirit is part of creation itself, however, it is unknowing down to the smallest iota. 6. When a new spirit is created, which is still unknowing in every way, it lives in a human body and begins to learn. 7. Persons may consider the unknowing spirit as stupid and say that the individual is confused. 8. But it is not, because it is only unknowing and devoid of knowledge and wisdom. 9. Thus may this new spirit live a life within a human being in order to gather knowledge. 10. Then, when the spirit enters the beyond, it is no longer as unknowing as it was at the time of its beginning. 11. And it returns into the world and lives again as a human being, but is no longer quite as unknowing as it was at its beginning. 12. Again it learns and gathers further knowledge and new wisdom, and thereby increasingly escapes from ignorance. 13. So, after many renewed lives, the time comes when people say that this spirit is normal and not confused. 14. But this is neither the end of the spirit nor its fulfillment, because, having become knowing, The spirit now seeks the greatest wisdom. 15. Thus, the human spirit perfects itself so extensively that it unfolds in a creational manner and ultimately becomes one with creation, as it was destined from the earliest beginning. 16. Thus, creation has brought forth a new spirit, allowing it to be perfected independently in the human body. The perfected spirit returns to creation to become one with it, and in this manner creation perfects itself within itself, for in it is the knowledge and wisdom to do so. 17. Truly, I say to you, the time will never come when creation ceases to create new spirit forms and to broaden itself. 18. However, creation also requires rest, a characteristic of all that lives, and when it slumbers it does not create. The Book of the Book of Books, the Book of Truth Falon Life's Navel or the Navel of Life, in the ancient Lyron, Canon 816. Creation lived, had feeling and sensitivity, mind and intelligence and the idea of life. 17. And it grew powerful and mighty in true love, to expand and to stretch itself. 18. With its power it changed its thoughts and its idea into becoming, so it therefrom created space and time. 19. It created the universe thus, which in its expanse was empty and only filled with the spiritual power energy of expanding creation. Various canons, Canon 9, Canon 32, Canon 42, Canon 39, Canon 52. One of the first things to learn in terms of the teaching of the Spirit is to understand is the term creation. You can look at creation in terms of wisdom and love. This concept is summed up very well in the statement that comes from one of Billy's writings. All of nature in its indescribable splendor is nothing but the love of creation, which is expressed visibly. Its laws are so wonderfully arranged that people everywhere come up against its radiating love. If he, however, closes his senses, he may not feel it and find it, and hence he declares that there is no love in this world. But creation has formed and arranged everything so wonderfully, so that people can recognize the majestic love of creation at every moment and in every place. Perhaps most importantly, these teachings stress that we seek understanding and truth, knowledge, wisdom and love through our own efforts and reasonable logic, not through belief. Who or what is God? Canon 521. In the name of creation, the wise, the righteous. 2. Praise be to creation, in which there is allness. 3. And it speaks the prophet about God and creation. 4. In that the human understands the truth and knows the difference between God and creation. 5. Thus may the word be directed to the human of earth. 6. In the name of creation, the wise, the righteous. 7. In that he knows the truth and his path of life then adapts. 8. The gods of earth were human beings. 9. They came from the depths of the universe, from foreign systems, galaxies and worlds. 10. They elevated themselves on the earth and rightfully above the humans, named themselves God, the Creator. 11. They created sects and religions, and that the earth human may be dependent and faithful to them. 12. And they demanded that the human worship them, the gods, as Creator. 13. Thus the human of earth may be enslaved and be dependent on the gods for all time. 14. And each god created a separate religion and set himself as Creator above the humans, who faithfully became slaves to him. 15. And many of the gods were degenerated and malicious, obsessed by greed for power and all evil. 16. They declared laws of death, punishment and destruction, and they murdered, as was their mood for it. Zahar here is a description of the Zahar from the Book of Them. In the beginning was the egg form of the creation spiral, brought forth through the idea of the original creation. The creation spiral was spiritual original form, tiny, and only the size of a flea. But in the spiral rotated and pulsed the spirit energy form of the emerging creation, forceful and willed towards expanding. The energy form grew and became a ball of power and exploded in blazing lightning fire. A Zahir between the countless universes of the absolute space. Zahir described in Contact 219,113. During the formation of the universe, the greatest brightness was given, 114. A beaming, bright, white Zahir light that resulted from the Big Bang explosion. 115. Then came the blue phase of the galaxy's development and stars' development, etc., from which the material form of the present universe developed, which exhibits a beige color that, over the course of time and evolutionary change, will be followed by the colors of turquoise, green, red, and yellow. So since the origin of the universe, there is the following series of colors up to its end. 116. 1. Beaming, bright, white Zahir light Big Bang phase. 117. 2. Beaming blue existence development phase. 118. 3. Beige first existence phase. 119. 4. Turquoise second existence phase. 120. 5. Green third existence phase. 121. 6. Red final existence phase. 122. 7. Yellow contraction phase. Contact Report 31 Billy's Trip on the Great Spacer. New translation by David Guerra. Contact Report 31. Contact Report 31. 231 is since many millennia on many worlds in the universe, the Earth human stands in the entire universe as a purely materialistically developed life form, which solely represents a life form so deeply decayed to materialism. That every consciousness-related evolution in this ground over millennia was harmful. Goblet of Truth. Fig information on the Goblet of Truth. This paragraph comes from the writing called The Goblet of Truth, and I think it does a good job of describing the creation. This paragraph is entitled What the Truth Knows to Say. Goblet of Truth, page 51. Rivers, stones, plants, animals, lakes, seas, brooks, springs, the air and water, trees and bushes and everything that crawls and flies here on earth are life forms with a spirit form, with very many of them being connected by psychic vibrations. All of them are we and heightened too that communicate with one another, all knowing about their common existence amongst one another. The consciousness and psyche of all creatures are in turn bound on a journey through time, incorporating very many bodily existences through the innumerable forms in which life appears. In this process, death is a passage to rebirth as well as the conversion into the other world, the world of pure spirit. This is the basis for the tightly woven and indissoluble web of all life, and in this way no form of life strives to rise up over the others within their group and to set themselves up over the others, because each life form contains a basic goodness and not evil. After all, evil is learned and practiced as a result of inappropriate doings and degeneracy. Goblet of Truth, page 61. If you human beings of Earth search for the creational laws and recommendations that form creational harmony and goodness, with intellect and rationality and with your intuition, you will find them everywhere. You will recognize and understand them at every turn, whether in the bubbling of a spring, in the face of a human being, and a flower, in the sounds of the forest or the sea, in the glinting of the sun, the twinkling of the stars, in the eyes of an animal, or in any other things that exist everywhere. And if you human beings of Earth make yourselves once again capable of linking this new and yet primeval truth in all forms with all real forms of life, then you will be able to tread a holistic path in the consciousness of truth. Goblet of Truth, Chapter 2. Everything in the firmaments, universe, and on Earth's worlds/planets is the work of creation, but it has made it for you to be yours so that you might control everything respectfully, guide everything correctly, and do everything for your own benefit and that of everything living and otherwise existing. Therefore everything in the firmaments, universe, and on earth has been given to you as your own, for you to care for well and protect so that nothing degenerates into the spilling of blood or into destruction. 7_forums_of_prayer_by_no codemion dangers of third millennium prophecies and predictions. If we on earth do not follow the creational natural laws, then catastrophes will continue to increase in their intensity, as will the evil that exists on the earth. The negative events that occur in this era will be worse than we have ever experienced before. We have accepted false modes of behavior, which have brought disaster to both us and nature. Here is an example of a creational natural law from the Book of Murado, life's navel, or the navel of life. In the ancient Lyron, esteem, exercise, and bring respect and reverence towards all life. Adoration and worship is due unto creation alone. Greed for profit will bring about catastrophes into nature. The leaders in power will cast the people into deeper states of misery. People will become more indifferent and mistrustful of one another, leading to anger and vengeance. Greed for profit, corrupt leadership, anger, and distrust will lead to war on earth and in space. Our skyscrapers will collapse, the fields will lie in waste, barbarism will rise, hunger will ravage the world. Climate change brought on by overpopulation will become ever worse, causing drought, vast storms including rainstorms, firestorms, colder weather, landslides, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, high tides. Millions of people will lose their life. Some will commit suicide. Some will turn to drugs. Some will act like wild beasts. Goblet of Truth, page 63. Your greed for profit, you human beings of earth, is continuing to abound more and more, and the people in power in your world are casting your populations of all states into ever deeper misery, making self-aggrandizing and megalomaniacal decisions over your heads, and taking all the power of determination away from you as a people. For more information on the third millennium, see the following page on the future of mankind. Third millennium corrupt leadership. Our leadership is making self-aggrandizing and megalomaniacal decisions. Megalomania, a psychopathological condition characterized by delusional fantasies of wealth, power, or omnipotence. The man Bush is megalomaniacal and of the firm persuasion that he is his God's representative on earth and must free the world from all evil. Fig Special Bulletin 016. Self-aggrandizing - the act or practice of enhancing or exaggerating one's own importance, power, or reputation. Removal of self-determination. Our leaders are taking all the power of determination from us. I think is referring to the loss of our freedoms, gun control, loss freedom of speech, mandatory vaccinations, etc. But perhaps the most important aspect of this removal of self-determination is the use of mind control. See the following film, A Globalist Agenda for a Dumbed-Down Domesticated Society by Alan Watt. Alan Watt says that this Zbigniew Brzezinski, National Security Advisor to President Carter, stated that shortly the public would be unable to think and reason for themselves. Eventually he said that the public would expect the media to do all of their thinking and reasoning for them. That has happened today, and that is why people cannot think outside of the programming of television. Therefore, you are becoming ever more indifferent to one another, more mistrustful of one another, and increasingly emotionless, disinterested, indolent, and obtuse in interpersonal relationships, which is causing simple human connections to be destroyed and entire families to be ruined. Under such unbearable circumstances, many amongst you will feel blazing anger rise up within you and will therefore torment other fellow human beings, or even extract bloody revenge on them. However, trust amongst you human beings will vanish to an increasing extent, leading to ever-worsening forms of jealousy and hatred arising in many of you, whether because of a difference of opinion. The focus on money and profit, this focus on hierarchy and greed, is leading to problems with relationships. Human connections to be destroyed, Here are some of the definitions that Billy uses to describe people in the third millennium. Obtuse, annoyingly insensitive or slow to understand. Stupid or unintelligent, not able to think clearly or to understand what is obvious or simple. The following films for some examples of a dumbed-down public: The Dumbing Down of America, Charlotte Iserbyt, Susan Jacoby Indolent, wanting to avoid activity or exertion. Lazy. Disinterested, having or feeling no interest in something. Lack of trust, we will lose our belief in the reliability of each other. Warlike destruction, a warlike destruction will prevail amongst you. Barbarity, extreme cruelty or brutality, absence of culture and civilization. Climate change, caused by the overpopulation of your earthly humanity, will entail huge natural catastrophes which will become ever worse and also impinge on your own lives. As a result, in future ever more severe droughts and periods of cold weather, as well as vast storms of all kinds, rainstorms and firestorms brought forth by forest fires will scourge the entire earth. We will make laws that terrorize our environment, and we will fall back into a state of barbarity. Click the following link. See some examples of the incredible catastrophes we have already experienced. Catastrophes of the Third Millennium. Contact Report 215, line 223. Enormous firestorms and gigantic hurricanes will sweep over the USA and bring devastation, destruction, and annihilation, as this from time immemorial never before will have happened. Humans becoming ever more uneducated, but the effects of overpopulation are also demonstrated by humans becoming ever more uneducated, and becoming addicted to evil vices, habits, and degenerations, whereby the most common forms are especially alcohol, drugs, and excessive seeking of pleasure and craving for travel, as well as degenerated sexual cravings. Fukushima will become a tremendous global disaster. For more information, see the Fukushima page. Economy. The following comes from Contact 213 Billy 83. Unpleasant, what you're saying. The old Confederates, who gave their blood for the freedom of Switzerland and the Swiss people, would probably turn over in their graves if they knew all these things. But what lies ahead with the economy, etc. Quetzal, 84. Unfortunately, it looks very bleak. 85. The coming time will bring that very many enterprises of large and small style will be dissolved or be driven into bankruptcy by mismanagement and over-indebtedness. 86. Unfortunately, this will also apply to the long-established firms and enterprises, because their irresponsible ones will remove themselves from their leadership in order to arrive quickly at exorbitant wealth, which they will pay to themselves as compensations and settlements, and more, these compensation payments will be in the millions. 87. Unhesitatingly and irresponsibly, the managers and directors of the firms, enterprises, and corporations will boundlessly get into debt and ruin these, whereby megalomania will be owned by these irresponsible ones just as much as extravagance, unpredictability, ignorance, and incompetence. 88. All of this will become well known over time, but those in charge of legislative representation don't concern themselves with this, because they themselves will be partly involved in the mismanagement issues. 89. For this reason, the criminal leaders of the firms, enterprises, and corporations won't be prosecuted by the courts, at least in most cases. 90. Also, white-collar crime will greatly increase, while the offense amounts will rapidly skyrocket into the millions and hundreds of millions, and will even exceed the 1 billion mark, as this will also be the case with the mismanagement of the firms, enterprises, and corporations. War Fig Bulletin 56. In today's world, in which the earlier anchored certainties, virtues, love, peace, freedom and harmony, as well as evolutionary knowledge and wisdom, break away, in which all good values disintegrate more and more, in which more and more wars are stirred up and led through the state powers who are criminals against humanity. See also overpopulation. The planet itself is tormented and slowly destroyed because atomic and other explosions disturb the Earth's structure and release earthquakes and sea quakes as well as volcanic eruptions. Waters, nature, the atmosphere and the Earth space is polluted and poisoned, while the primeval forests are destroyed and annihilated through greed for profit. For more information, see the Future of Mankind website. Where are you going, humanity? Page 73. Goblet of Truth. Your spirit will never cease to exist, but will continue to exist endlessly and ultimately will unite with creation, the universal consciousness. Existing life in the universe. The amazing UFO and its Fig Bulletin for Predictions of the Prophet Jeremiah. Contact Report 229. Name, born on, died on, son of, Jeremiah, February 9, 662 BC, September 3, 580 BC. The high priest Hilkias, Adonathoth. Prophet Jeremiah, according to the Meier material, is one of the incarnations of Nokodemion. Nokodemion is the first incarnation of the spirit form that inhabits Billy Meier/Bean. According to the Meier material, the Bible contains a lot of inaccurate information. However, Jeremiah is often called the Weeping Prophet and is credited with authoring the book of Jeremiah, 1 Kings, 2 Kings and the book of Lamentations in our Bible. Jeremiah's information are predictions, meaning that they will take place, as opposed to prophecies, which may or may not take place. In our time, called the third millennium, people of the earth will be blinded by the pursuit of materialism. Materialism is the philosophy which says our reality consists entirely of physical matter that is the sole cause of every possible occurrence, including human thought, feeling, and action. I think that transhumanism is the natural extension of a materialistic view of reality. The warnings against materialism Jeremiah, and when the second millennium ends and the third has begun, human beings will be blinded by gold and material values to such an extent that they will be counting dollars, silver coins in all countries everywhere. Contact 31 mentions how we have been negatively affected by materialism. 231. As since many millennia and many worlds in the universe, the Earth human stands in the entire universe as a purely materialistically developed life form, which solely represents a life form so deeply decayed to materialism that every consciousness-related evolution in this ground over millennia was harmful. There is an article on the Future of Mankind site that warns of materialism and can be found at Peace and Harmony 18. Earth humans must learn not to solely pursue materialism and money from birth until death, and hence they should not listen just to those who have amassed political or military power or an immense fortune. And so they should neither aspire after them nor try to be like them, and devote neither their time, their work and efforts, nor their initiative and lives to them, as well. Introduction. The spirit teaching states that maliciously and dishonestly they, the Earth humans, strive only for power, greed, materialism, and hatred against their fellow men and themselves. On the day their life clock stops ticking, they die, filled with fear, disharmony and hatred. Warnings against religion. Jeremiah, they will build cult places for cults to worship and will pay homage to a non-existent God as well as saints who are human beings canonized by human beings. Who or what is God? No creator God exists in this sense. The Big Bang did not come about through the strength or might of one God, but did so, simply and exclusively, through spiritual and material physical as well as chemical processes that were triggered and directed by a young universal consciousness, respectively creation. The term God has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the creation of the world or the universe, stars, galaxies and the like, for the expression God has existed in the vastness of the universe for billions of years, from ancient times to the present, and it represents nothing more than the title of a person. Initially this title was Ishwish, which means God when translated into our languages. But Ishwish, respectively God, is nothing more than another term for King of Wisdom. It is a purely human title assigned to humans who were particularly knowledgeable, wise, and who possessed great mastery in everything. The Enoch prophecy has contact 215,167. Monstrous forces will be created by science and will be released by the military forces and armies as well as by terrorists, causing great destruction. 168. Millions and even billions of people will be killed by acts of terrorism, by wars and civil wars. And finally, in some parts of the world, every third human being, and, in other places, every fourth human being, will lose his or her life. 169. The nations of the East will rise against the nations of the West against the East. 170. Many deaths will be inflicted upon the people by fighter and bomber aircraft, and bombs and rockets will destroy and annihilate smaller and larger villages and cities. 171. The people will be completely powerless against all this and will live through 888 days of hell on earth, suffering hunger and plagues, which will claim even more lives than the war itself. 178. However, not only Europe will be affected but ultimately all the countries and peoples of the earth, as the great horror expands to a war that will encompass the entire world. 187. Due to the fault of scientists, enormous power will be seized by the power-hungry and their military, their warriors and terrorists, and power will be seized as well through laser weapons of many types, but also via atomic, chemical and biological weapons. 188. Also concerning genetic technology, enormous misuse will occur, because this will be unrestrainedly exploited for the purposes of war. Not lastly due to the cloning of human beings for warring purposes, as this was practiced in ancient times with the descendants of Enoch in the regions of Sirius. 194. But that will not be enough, and, in the guise of a so-called peaceful globalization, American politics will aspire to gain absolute control of the world concerning supremacy in the economy. 195. And this will point towards the possibility that a third world war could develop from it, if human beings as a whole will not finally reflect upon reason, become reasonable, and undertake the necessary steps against the insane machinations of their governments and military powers as well as their secret services, and call a halt to the power of the irresponsible who have forsaken their responsibility in all areas. Destruction in North America and the Enoch prophecies far in the West, it will be different. The United States of America will be a country of total destruction. But not even all the terrible happenings will hinder the USA in continuing to proceed with her actions against all countries. Even when the North American continent will be stricken by the most terrible catastrophe which has ever been recorded, evil military powers will wreak havoc with computerized and nuclear, biological and chemical weapons, whereby it will also happen that computerized weapons become independent and cannot be controlled any longer by human beings. To the statesmen in power and to mankind of Earth, Billy addresses some of the leaders of the Earth that have promoted wars, revolutions and warlike actions. He talks about WW1 and WW2. He states that the loss of life with the dropping of the atomic bombs in WW2 was much higher than reported. Billy also talks about the fire bombing of the city of Dresden in Germany. The bombing of Dresden caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. The actual number was closer to 250,000 people. The number of bombs that were dropped on the city of Dresden in WW2 was incredible. Origins of Earth Humans. There is a great page on the Future of Mankind site that explains very well the origins of Earth Humanity. This page can be found at the link Humanity. About 5 billion years ago the Earth was formed into a solid mass. There was no instant creation of the human beings or the planets. Humans started evolving naturally on Earth about 9-12 million years ago. The life form that started to evolve into mankind was known as Adilobacillus cramptoni. Adilobacillus cramptoni is a species of an extinct genus of mammal from the late Triassic, Carnian, about 225 million years ago. Adilobacillus cramptoni is thought to be the common ancestor of all modern mammals, or a close relative of the common ancestor. Human evolution. About 5 billion years ago, the Earth was formed into a solid mass. There was no instant creation of the human beings or the planets. Humans started evolving naturally on Earth about 9-12 million years ago. The life form that started to evolve into mankind was known as Adilobacillus cramptoni. Adilobacillus cramptoni is a species of an extinct genus of mammal from the late Triassic, Carnian, about 225 million years ago. Adilobacillus cramptoni is thought to be the common ancestor of all modern mammals, or a close relative of the common ancestor. Fig Special Bulletin 032. And finally, yet to explain, is that on all the worlds in the universe which bear higher and high life, the evolutionary path to humans, respectively becoming human through evolution, is the same. Consequently, primate beings, respectively primary beings, come into being everywhere, out of which, on one hand, through further evolution, the human species develops, while the remaining primary beings succumb to a degeneration of the form of consciousness, and thus remain primates, respectively, become ape beings, as they are called by Earth humans. Human beings and apes develop as completely separate beings. The human beings do not live a life based on instinct, but have a consciousness that was developed over millions of years. When the universe was formed, there were originally 343 different skin colors. Currently on Earth we have the remnants of 5 different races of human beings. People from the Sirius regions also established themselves of Mars and Malona. Currently, the Earth is overpopulated with a mixture of terrestrial and extraterrestrial races. Earth humans. Currently on Earth we have the remnants of 5 different kinds of human beings who are of extraterrestrial origin. These human beings come from the following: Mars technically advanced humans, from the Sirius system, called the Creator Overlords, created a new human race with a limited lifespan of 100 years. These people bore barbaric traits that tended toward degeneration and cruelty. This new genetically manipulated race fled the Sirius regions, found a way to the Sol system, where several thousands of rebellious genetically manipulated people had previously been banished to a myriad of terrestrial locations as a punishment. These masses of diverse races found refuge on the planets Mars and Malona/Phaeton, respectively, where they constructed cities, pyramids, stations and other things. They led a good life on Mars until the planet became uninhabitable through cosmic influences. Ponder merely the fact that powerful intelligences exist in the Sirius regions who have been revengefully searching for millions of years for those defectors who had escaped from there, the ET's, control and whom they had genetically manipulated, namely the terrestrial human population, in order to subsequently exterminate them. It is fortunate for us that these Sirians live in a constellation located in another space and time configuration from ours. In ancient times the Destroyer, a large comet with 1.72 times the mass of the Earth, penetrated the Martian orbit and wrenched Mars with it into another solar orbit. The Destroyer comet had moved Mars into the orbit of another planet in our solar system named Malona, where it remained. Subsequently, Malona drifted away, however, because of the Destroyer's powerful forces, but managed to exist in this orbit until the time when it was destroyed by its inhabitants many millennia later. The exploded fragments of the destroyed planet Malona eventually became the asteroid belt. Malona, a planet in our star system that is now the asteroid belt that lies between Mars and Jupiter, It was once a home for over 400 million human beings who were descendants from the genetically manipulated peoples that originated from the Sirius star system, long ago. 73,000 years ago, the human beings on Melona fought each other in a war that ended with the planet's destruction. 1. The constellation of Lyra/Vega. The Sirius region, the planets of Lyra/Vega and the Sirius region are shifted from our space and time configuration. This means that they cannot be seen from Earth. Over a long period of time, the people from the Sirius region also established themselves on Mars and Melona. On Mars there were pyramids and space stations that were built by these early civilizations. These artifacts were eliminated a couple of years ago by forces from the Sirius region. Chinese and Japanese races. Chinese and Japanese races are the youngest inhabitants of planet Earth. They are originally from the planet Kudra from the Cognisant star system. Some 2.5 million years ago they left Kudra and emigrated to Lyra, and 26,000 years ago they came to the planet Earth. From those immigrants the Chinese and Japanese people developed that we know today. There are still the descendants of extraterrestrial humans on Earth within Mount Shasta Hyperboreans. Humans in the universe. Our universe was created through the Big Bang 46 trillion years ago. Two parallel universes were created, the Dern universe and the Dal universe. We are living in the Dern universe in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way. The stars in our universe are much more spread apart than in the Dal universe. There are about 7.5 million solar systems that have higher forms of human life. The Milky Way galaxy is inhabited by 7.5 million human civilizations that are in different stages of development. There are many human civilizations that are more advanced than us. There were 79 pure human races created by creation. However, now there are incredible numbers of different human races. The exact number of races would be expressed by a number with 63 zeros. As stated earlier, the lifespans of human beings, on other worlds, can extend to thousands of years and even much longer. The diversity of human beings in terms of their size is also incredible. There are people that are only 16 inches tall, and on other worlds there are people that reach 40 feet tall. The Milky Way is a barred spiral galaxy 100,000-120,000 light-years in diameter, containing 200-400 billion stars. It may contain at least as many planets. The solar system is located within the disk, around 2/3 of the way out from the galactic center, on the inner edge of a spiral-shaped concentration of gas and dust called the Orion Arm. The Milky Way contains at least 100 billion stars, 23, and may have up to 400 billion stars. The exact figure depends on the number of very low-mass, or dwarf stars, which are hard to detect, especially at distances of more than 300 light-years, 90 pc, from the Sun. As a comparison, the neighboring Andromeda galaxy contains an estimated 1,000,000,012 stars. More info. Ancient Lyra, origin of the Lyrans, Lyrine galaxy and the Negaran galaxy. The Pleiadians say that our forefathers are their forefathers. The oldest branch of the human race that the Pleiadians have detailed information on is the Lyrans. The Lyrans first settled in our galaxy in the constellation of Lyra, which is about 20-30 light-years from Earth. The ancient homeworlds were planets within the constellation of stars known to us as Lyra, and near the Vega Lyrine galaxy. Contact report 238,699. The Lyrine galaxy also went the eternal way of coming into being and passing away. 670. It dissolved itself and turned into energy, out of which new stars and planets and a new galaxy came into being. 671. This happened 26 million years ago, which is why Nicodemio left the homeworlds with his peoples prior to that and settled on the worlds of the Lyra and Vega star systems. however, shifted a little and only about a fraction of a second from the present time. 672. So Nocodemion and his peoples therefore came very far out of the depths of the universe and settled themselves in the oldest space-shifted system area of the Milky Way galaxy. 673. However, this was already Nocodemion's third exodus, because before he established or created his people on the planet Sitter, he came from other galaxies and planets that were older than the Lyrian galaxy, and which also passed into the way of decay. Negaran Galaxy Contact Report 238 Billy. But let's leave this subject, and let's go to the next question, which relates to where the original Lyrans actually came from and when they settled in the areas of Lyra and Vega. Ta 51. The time of their first emigration dates back to 110 million years ago, and their place of origin was a planet named Kados in a distant galaxy, known as Negaran Galaxy, at an average distance from the Sol system of 6.3 billion light-years. The following comes from part of an interview with Billy in 1988 that discusses the Lyrians and Vegians. The first extraterrestrials who came to Earth were not Pleiadians, but humans from worlds that exist within another dimension in the area of the Lyra and Vega systems. The first Lyrians, together with the Vegians, came to Earth initially 22 million years ago. Their stay here was very brief, and they continued their travels to other star clusters and planets. Their history is largely obscure, even though assault groups occasionally continued to return to Earth. Approximately 389,000 years ago, several million Lyrians and Vegians again left their native worlds, entered our order of space and time in this dimension, and came to Earth where they mingled with the Earthlings. They procreated in the normal manner and through the manipulation of genes by genetic engineers. From this interaction evolved the Lyrian and Earth-human mixture of beings by normal reproduction. The results of the genetic engineering produced beings that were part human, part animal, and included giants, titans, and other creatures. In the course of hundreds and thousands of years, these creatures were displaced once again, and eventually died out because they could not reproduce or because conditions for their life forms proved fatal for them. In the constellation of Lyra are some very large planets that served as the home of the Lyrans. The Lyrans were titans standing 20-30 feet tall. In addition, they had blonde hair and blue eyes. They had very advanced technologies and very advanced spiritual powers. The power of their human spirit allowed them to have long 2,000-year lifespans. The Lyrans were a people that would often take control of the planets of less developed civilizations. They moved their forces around the galaxy and took control of many lesser developed civilizations. Many of the battles that the Lyrans had were very one-sided. For example, here is a quote from one of the contact reports. Their weapons were of great power and fighting efficiency, in consequence of which, fights against whole nations of strange worlds were short and one-sided, an advantage for the conquerors. More info. Over the years, the Lyran people mixed with many other civilizations, creating many different colors and races, which spread throughout the galaxy. Just at the peak of their civilization, a comet known as the Destroyer Comet found its way into their solar system and ravaged the Lyran family of planets. This comet wiped out 2/3 of their civilization and set what was once a very advanced human society back to the Stone Age. The Great Lyran Empire then degenerated back to one planet with no technology to speak of. But through hardness and lots of privation, they soon found a new beginning, by which they built up after 9 centuries, a new civilization and culture. After 9 centuries of rebuilding, the Lyrans restored their civilization and once again dominated thousands of worlds. The Lyrans went through a series of civilizations over the years. It was their pattern to rise to power, fight among themselves, and then degenerate back to primitive society. Lyrian colonization of Earth, 387,000 BC, to begin with, In the constellation of Lyra we find the origin of man dating back as far as Pleiadian history extends. Here on these ancient planets are the ancestors of the oldest known form of human life of which they are aware. 22 million years ago ancient Lyran travelers first came into our system and built a colony. For more information see theyfly.com. Since these were among the first attempts at space travel for them, it took a long time to reach Earth. When they arrived, they recorded the existence of very primitive human beings here. They found that Earth was a planet where human life had naturally developed over the course of evolution, but it was currently in a very primitive state. The Earth humans were a brown-skinned race who barely possessed any powers of reasoning or intellect, and were of no concern to the celestial visitors. Over the course of the next few thousand years many expeditions were made to Earth, resulting in a variety of colonies being formed for short periods of time. The flight machines used by the Lyrans were of saucer-like form and had a beam drive. These beam drive propulsion systems are described in greater detail in Contact Report for Starting a Line 30. By these means they flew out to the widths of the universe, towards other sun systems and planets, which they expeditioned and colonized, either by peaceful means or by murderous wars. There were 134,207 Lyrans that escaped the wars in the Lyran constellation and set up a small colony on Earth. It is purely my own speculation that there were males and females in this group. In any case, the Lyrans made slaves out of the native Earth humans. They also did experiments on them, mated them with animals, raped and disfigured them. Eventually the word of their crimes got back to the Lyran worlds. The Lyrans sent a fleet of ships to Earth, and took all of the technology of these 134,207 soldiers, and left them stranded on Earth. These Lyran soldiers no longer had no ships or any of their technologies. Over thousands of years these Lyran degenerated into primitive society and lost the knowledge of their own history. The spirits of the Lyran soldiers became part of the spirit world of Earth, and they would now be incarnating here on Earth. Pleasure in history at this time the Lyrans had advanced to the point where some of them mastered the almost unlimited powers of the human spirit. The abilities of telepathy and telekinesis eventually come to human races that continue to evolve. In ancient Lyra the people that excelled in these abilities were called JSCHWJSCH, pronounced Ishwish. The term JSCHWJSCH in ancient Lyrian means king of wisdom. Ta and Pelagon were two examples of an JSCHWJSCH. Here is another interesting quote from the contact notes, but this power still not controllably mastered, was used for wicked purposes and for mischief on many worlds. More info. Even on the Lyran home worlds the JSCHWJSCH leaders ruled with a cruel power. There was a time of about 4 centuries that the people that were under the rule of the JSCHWJSCH prepared secretly for a war of liberation. When the war finally broke out, 3 of the Lyran home worlds were completely destroyed by some massive weapon. Here is what the contact notes say about this weapon. 3 worlds of the Lyra system were simply eliminated and dissolved to energy by a new process, which meanwhile on the Earth is already in the beginning of its development. In Earth chronology, the outbreak of the Liberation War in the Lyra and Vega systems was around 230,000 years ago. Asael was in JSCHWJSCH, who eventually leads some 360,000 Lyrans out of the Lyra to escape the incredible wars that were going on there. However, it seems that Asael was in fact a commander of one of the armies, for the contact notes state the high commander of the terrorizing armies was an E by the name of Asael. Eventually Asael led many people out of the Pleiades, but at this point I am wondering if he might have in fact been JSCHWJSCH that was abusing his power. The saga that took place in the Lyra in the ancient past was very involved and is truly an incredible drama. At this point I cannot say if a sail was a white hat or not. However, it kind of looks like may have been one of the JSCHWJSCH that was abusing his power. This group wandered the cosmos for a while in 183 great spacer ships and 253 smaller ships until they found their new home. Eventually, Asael and his followers came to what we today call the Pleiades. However, the Pleiadians of that time called this system of 254 young blue stars the Asael system. They settled on planets near a star called Taget. Another name for Pleiaris or Pleiara, the star system containing inhabited planets Era, Lusta and Askel. Here 3 planets were made inhabitable. However, it took 300 years to make these planets inhabitable. Era is about 500 light-years away from Earth on the other side of the Pleiades star cluster in other space-time configuration. What exact mechanism they used to make the planet inhabitable is not entirely understood. Another important thing to note is that when the ships of Asael came out of hyperspace there was some kind of error that was made and then ended up in different time-space configuration. Space-time configuration has roughly the same meaning as dimension. Era is located about 500 light-years away from Earth on the other side of the Pleiades star cluster in a different time-space configuration. Era is the home world of Ta, Quetzal, Semius, Sfroth and 550 million others. Member of the Pleiadian Federation. The following are some important facts about the culture that currently exists on this world. It's important to note that this culture developed over time and these conditions did not exist when this world was in its earlier stages of development. Economy non-monetary robot-assisted manufacturing borrowed asset scheme, for example flying cars etc. Poverty eradicated food, energy and housing-free relationships. Both monogamy and polygamy exist. One man to many women, but not the other way around. Subsequent reincarnation as the opposite sex equals out the apparent inequality. No men and women on Era are homosexual or bisexual as this benign and natural genetic disorder has been eradicated through genetic manipulation. There are virtually never any incompatible couples due to the use of advanced astrology and other social sciences. Our solar system in the ancient past Pleia and the colonization of Earth, Mars, Malona, 226,000 BC. 70 years later Asael walked the way of all perishable things. He died. He was succeeded by his daughter Pleia, And, in which consequence the home system was changed in name from Asael to the Pleia system, because for the then human beings, who were Titans, the symbolization was still of much value, like still today for the human being of the Earth, corresponding to degenerate logic. A group of explorers led by Pleia, the daughter of Asael, rediscovers Earth, Mars and Malona. Pleia and her ships were following in tail of the destroyer Comet. The tail of the destroyer Comet contained debris from the original home world of the Lyra. When they got to Earth they found native Earth humans, which could be traced back to the origin of Earth. These native Earth humans were brown-skinned people. However, there were white people on the planet as well, which were the descendants of the original 134,000 that came here from Lyra. The people of Pleia were able to detect the Lyran spirit forms of these colonists who had degenerated into a very primitive state. All of the people of Earth at this time were existing in a very primitive state. Eventually Pleia colonists are sent to all of these 3 worlds, Mars, Earth and Malona. Within a very short time people came from the Pleiades and populated Mars, Malona and Earth. Near destruction of Earth by warfare, destruction of Mars and Malona, 196,000 BC, war broke out on Earth but was stopped by the troops of Pleia. Eventually, war broke out in Pleiades, and the rule of Pleia came to an end. The planets of Mars, Malona and Earth existed for more than 30,000 years without leadership from the Pleiades. War breaks out again on Earth and people are evacuated back to the Pleiades. Some 40 years later, the people of Melona destroy their planet by creating a great explosion. The explosion of the planet Melona eventually creates the asteroid belt that exists in our solar system. Mars is thrown out of orbit and all life is gone. There is some interesting information that Semyas told Billy about during their fourth contact in regards to the planet Melona, Contact Report 4-111. A second race also had to experience this truth in your solar system. 112. In their unlimited hatred and unquenchable thirst for power, they destroyed themselves right down to the last man, and scarcely a creature survived the conflict. 113. They eliminated and destroyed their own planet with a huge explosion, and nothing remained of it but the many thousands of asteroids, which today still circle your sun, as a reminder of the human being's deadly irrationality. 114. These asteroids are remnants of the once thriving planet Melona, which was destroyed by its inhabitants in their barbarian thirst for power and irrationality. Earth is on its own. 116,000 BC. For the next 80,000 there are few attempts at colonization, but generally Earth is left alone. The Pleiadians have problems of their own and they left Earth alone. Except, sometimes criminals are exiled here. The civilizations that were on Mars and Melona have been lost and the Earth has just small colonies on it. The Great Plan, 58,000 BC, but then finally the time came when the Great Plan was finally started. In several hundred great spacer and smaller ships, the Earth was again approached and occupied. A great culture was erected, which remained for 6,000 years, until once more the thirst for power increased among the Haming scientists, which led to horrible war activities, and once more all was destroyed to the last piece. In this way, the Earth fell again into its earlier state, where all forms of life existing thereon grew savage. A war came about that was so devastating that it annihilated almost all life forms on Earth and erased every trace of their existence. Pelagon and the recolonization of Earth, 48,000 BC. This date is in question. Pelagon, see Contact Report 9, brings 70,000 people and 200 scientists from the Pleiades to settle on Earth. Under the teaching of Pelagon, this society reaches levels of spiritual development never before achieved on Earth. One of the great Pleiadian leaders of this time was a man named Pelagon. There was a great war raging on the three home planets of the Pleiades. Pelagon had tremendous understanding of the spiritual laws, and he could see that the wars in the Pleiades would lead to great destruction. He decided to take a group of 70,000 people out of the Pleiades along with 200 scientists. They looked for a place of safety and refuge from the great wars that were bringing death to so many. Pelagon decided to go to Earth to flee the tyranny and death that seemed to follow the Lyrian family. Pelagon had seemingly magical abilities to rule over life and death. He was once seen floating in the air, held up by the power of his mind. He was also said to be able to cause plants to grow with his mind. Pelagon became for the first god image on Earth. The spiritual leaders were able to gain control on the Pleiades. However, here on Earth the followers of Pelagon were currently living in peace. As time goes, we are able to solve the problems of life with more spiritual solutions. After Pelagon died, another he took over named Jesus. Jesus was a cruel tyrant. Therefore, many hundreds of thousands of people fled in great and small spaceships to the free cosmos, escaped and settled on Beta Centauri, see Alpha Centauri. It is interesting to note that science today recognizes that there is an Earth-sized planet that is rotating around Alpha Centauri b. I think it's very possible that this is the planet that these individuals fled to. Some of the people fled Earth and went to the Barnard star. The Barnard star is a low-mass red dwarf star about 6 light-years from Earth. It is the closest individual star to the Earth. However, the closest star system to Earth is the Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri system. Alpha Centauri is a binary star system. However, there is an additional star, third star, in this system. Alpha and Beta Centauri rotate around a common center at a distance about the same as our Sun and Pluto. Alpha Centauri is a star with 110% of the mass of our Sun and about 1.5 times the brightness. Alpha Centauri b is a star with 90% of the mass of our Sun and about 44% of its brightness. There is an Earth-sized planet that is rotating Alpha Centauri b, which is the closest known exoplanet to Earth. This planet is known as Alpha Centauri bb and is the closest known planet to Earth. The official announcement of its existence occurred in October of 2012 and is considered a landmark in research. This discovery was made by the Observatory of Geneva working with other organizations. This planet might be considered to be a twin Earth in the immediate vicinity of the Sun. Proxima Centauri, also known as Alpha Centauri c. A lot of material covered on this radio show deals with the Billy Meier case. Most of the big questions in life are answered by the information in the case. Questions like who we are, where we come from, and what will happen in our future are answered by information in the contact notes. Let me recommend the following page from Michael Horton's website, http://theyfly.com/gaia/arians.htm. The previously mentioned page will provide more information about Lyron and Plagiarin history. Of course, the other great source of information for the Billy Meier contact notes comes from the Billy Meier Wiki, which is called The Future of Mankind. Barnard's Star. The Barnard's Star is a low-density brown dwarf star that is the closest individual star to Earth. The Alpha Centauri system is closer, but it consists of 3 stars. The Barnard star cannot be seen with the naked eye because it is too dim. Astronomers think it's a possibility that the Barnard star has planets that rotate around it as well. Hyperborean spacecraft. Within Mount Shasta in Northern California is a small city that contains 700 people who are called the Hyperboreans. They are the leftover descendants of a group of extraterrestrial humans that lived on the Earth in the ancient past. The golden-colored spherical spacecraft are seen coming out of the Mount Shasta and are at times possibly seen at other locations like Mount Mammoth. To see a possibly genuine photograph of such a spaceship, click on the following link. Jeffrance. The city is found very deep in the center of Mount Shasta, and the entrace is well camouflaged onto the eastern mountain peak. The Hyperboreans at times also get visits from extraterrestrials who come here from other worlds. The Hyperboreans carry beam weapons that are used to sometimes make Earth humans who come into their proximity temporarily unable to move. 2 smaller groups of the Hyperboreans are living unrecognized and deep underground on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. These Hyperboreans have been on the Earth for about 180,000 to 190,000 years. They seem in some way to be related to the current white human race. From these Hyperboreans came the JHWH, who gave Enoch his great wisdom and who commissioned Noah to build the Great Ark. According to the Meier material, Noah did not actually build the ark himself, and the story of Noah and the ark has been changed greatly over time. None of the large animals, 4-legged animals, could have ever made it down off of Mount Ararat. During the time of Enoch, Contact Report 39 says the following about the polar regions of Earth. 190. The polar regions at the time of Enoch were wondrous landscapes, filled with palms and other tropical vegetation. 191. You would say that it was paradise on Earth, for it had the most favorable climate of your world. In Hyperborea, an uninterrupted summer prevailed. So I think that Hyperborea is essentially Florida. However, at that time it was physically located where Greenland is today because the pole shift had not occurred. Ta states later, 202. In Hyperborea, in Florida, when it was still at the spot where today Noah's Ark. This information is not even on the future of mankind's site. However, it comes from one of Colonel Wendell Stevens' books containing an early translation of Contact Report 70. This information was given to me via Larry Driscoll. It picks up where some of the people from the Fig group there in Switzerland who are driving Billy out to the contact site. Billy gets to the site where Semyas takes him into the ship. Billy starts to ask Semyas questions. Billy is asking questions in regards to the history of the earth, human, and the various gods that have operated on the earth. The first thing that Billy mentions is that Noah Nasser was about 3 meters and 10 centimeters tall. This makes Noah over 10 feet tall. He was commissioned to build the ark by an JHWH. This is the same JHWH who gave Enoch his great wisdom. Remember that Enoch is one of the former personalities of the human spirit that is today incarnated as Billy Meier. Semyas later told Billy that Noah was not actually the one that ended up building the ark. Much of the information that we have about the story of Noah has been falsified. This was actually built around 98,400 years earlier and, hence, around 100,000 years ago, calculated back from today. According to him, Quetzal, the ark landed about 100,000 years ago, and not on the peak of the 5,165-meter high Ararat, but about 30 kilometers away and not at the height of a summit. The size of the ark also corresponds to the one given in the Bible. With this, the many animals, and only a few human beings had really survived an earlier deluge which, like the biblical deluge, was Contact Reports 150. The events associated to the ark actually took place about 100,000 years ago. The large 4-footed animals could have never climbed down from Mount Ararat. Contact Report 39. The biblical flood did not happen at the time as claimed by the Bible, but in the year 4613 before Christ, and was brought about by the destroyer. Destroyer falls into the Earth's orbit, which disturbs the Earth in its rotation and in its revolution around the Sun, triggering immense earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and elementary storms, and from the whole event the biblical flood arises. Nevertheless, the event happened amazingly close to what the Bible reports, only that the builder was a man named Noah Nasser, and he maintained contact with an extraterrestrial named Zbalon, he who brings the hosts of the universe, who explained the approaching danger of the comet to him. He advised him to build the ark, which he then did in cooperative work with his family and, hence, survived the immense deluge, along with his family members and many domestic and land animals. These factual events were handed down since around 98,000 years ago by word of mouth again and again, whereby the name Noah Nasser was altered little by little into oblivion, and finally ended in the name of Noah, while the extraterrestrial who was in contact with Noah Nasser was unnamed and elevated to a god. This story is told in Contact Report 238. The destroyer Comet Contact 236 describes that 22 million years ago, as the destroyer had done its work of destruction in the Lyran home systems. The Wanderer, or the Destroyer, as it is called, is about 5 billion years old, as a solid body according to Contact Report 238. Colonel Wendell Stevens' complete version of Contact Report 70 says the following about the destroyer comet 65 / under the command of the new leader Meier. Further expeditions were prepared, which would explore a very remote and outlying solar system, which according to all calculations must have gained possession of a part of the planet from the Lyra system, when many million years ago the destroyer had killed the original homeworlds. During Billy's fourth contact with Ascot, she provides insight into the Great Pyramids and Destroyer Comet. She described how the Great Pyramids were used to save mankind during the Great Deluge in 9535 BC, which was caused by this great comet. The coming of the destroyer comet was foreseen by the seer Sarid, son of King Saluk, 300 years prior. The destroyer comet penetrated this universe and this solar system from another space-time configuration. The people of the Earth made their way to the pyramids and underground villages and shut themselves into them as the destroyer passed by the Earth. The comet turned the Earth, flooded it with all the bodies of water, and annihilated everything which was at its mercy. Once again Earth humanity had to find a new start after this catastrophe, as had already repeatedly been the case in earlier times. According to Contact 251, the destroyer comet caused the reversal of the position of planet Mars and planet Malona. The Sol system's asteroid belt contains fragments of this former planet, whose orbit was not where the asteroid belt is today but was located where Mars orbits the Sun today, and Mars at one time was located where the asteroid belt is today. This position reversal was caused by immense upheavals in which the destroyer planet played an important role. The Plagiarin have moved the destroyer comet as described in Contact 311, so it will no longer come back to our solar system. Therefore, the prophecies associated with it are no longer relevant. The following is an excerpt from Contact 311. I'm glad about that. Thanks. Then I would immediately like to ask you some questions. Since you've catapulted the destroyer from the Sol system a fairly long time ago, or in some way removed it, the prophecies associated with it are probably no longer relevant, right? Atlantis and Lemuria. Contact 59. The information in this section comes from the following. Contact Report 7/9/70 from the http://www.futureofmankind.co.uk/. Please read this page for the complete story of the Atlantis and Lemuria. Contact 59. Wendell Stevens translation. The Pleiadian Mission book by Randolph Winters. This information is unofficial and has not been authorized. Fig. Listen to the story of Atlantis and Lemuria. Right-click and choose Save Link as Contact 59 Part 3.mp3 complete. Contact 59. Wendell Stevens translation. A special thanks to Larry Driscoll for sending these copies. In addition, a special thanks to Donna Snyder for converting it to text. Pelagon comes to Earth and builds a civilization around 150,000 years ago. The Plagiarin found peace. However, just before that occurred, a scientist named Pelagon, see also Contact Report 9, elected himself the leader of about 70,000 human beings. With the help of his followers, he took possession of several great spacer ships and fled his home world. These people traveled through space and time and came to the Earth. There were about 200 good scientists with them. They lived on Earth and inhabited all of the continents of Earth, and lived in a very high state of development for about 10,000 years. Wendell Stevens' translation describes the wording. The time of Pelagon is there happened an earthly world war of a measure, like never before nor in later time until today was brought upon the Earth. Only a few thousand people escaped the destruction and fled in spaceships deep in the cosmos, where they settled on a strange world. The rise of Atlantis and Lemuria. A small group of people remained on the destroyed Earth, where they quickly degenerated. After about 7,000 years, the people that fled the Earth in those spacecraft returned to find that the only people on Earth were very wild and degenerated. The people that returned then built Greater Atlantis and Mu. The returnees were led by an Shwish with the name Atlant, married to an Shrish named Caryatide. Atlant was a man of obvious Lyran descent with broad shoulders and white skin. Atlantis was an island continent that existed between South America and Africa. Lemuria was built near the current Gobi Desert. Below Lemuria were the underground cities of Agartha Alpha and Agartha Beta. These two underground cities were connected by tunnels. The cities of Atlantis and Lemuria were built on two different continents. Greater Atlantis and Mu were then the two biggest cities ever built on Earth. Mars built the gigantic city of Mu. In these cities a high culture developed and everything began to flourish. The peace lasted for about 2,000 years. For thousands of years unity and peace ruled, until once more some scientists degenerated in their thirst for power. The Great War during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, some scientists degenerated and got a thirst for power, thereby started to stir up trouble. However, the people of Atlantis resisted these scientists, who eventually had to flee in spacecraft. This event occurred about 133,000 years ago. These people lived in a neighboring solar system, produced many descendants, and developed high technologies. These people after 2,000 years had developed lifespans of several thousands of years. These people came back to Earth under the leadership of Ares. Ares had 200 leaders and sub-leaders. One of his leaders was a great scientist named Semjasa that mated with an Earth woman. The offspring they referred to as Adam. Semjasa is also mentioned in Contact 191 in reference to problems that occurred on Earth in the ancient past. In any case, the Atlanteans used their great fleet of ships to melt the city of Lemuria to the ground. Greater Atlantis had an army of 4.83 million people, and they had 123,000 one-man beam ships. The best and most suited scientists of Mu were ordered to a suitable planetoid, which could be used as a deadly and destructive missile against Atlantis. So they flew out in their beam ships into free cosmic space, and in the ring of asteroids outside the orbit of Mars, they found an object suitable for their purpose. It was a planetoid several kilometers in diameter, whose exact size we still have not determined. With atomic and electromagnetic energies, it was pushed out of its orbit and took a course towards Earth. The great meteor. When the great missile was first sighted, it looked something like a great falling star. However, it appeared larger and larger as it approached the Earth. It began to glow, and when it reached the top of the Earth's atmosphere, it emitted a great sound, which was described as an unbearable howling sound. Then there was a fantastic heat that came from this great asteroid. The asteroid started to glow like a supernova, producing a temperature of 34,000. Whole regions of land burned to glowing ashes within seconds. The great meteor exploded at about 172 kilometers high into thousands of smaller meteors that had the power of 32,000 hydrogen bombs. There were a couple of great parts of the planetoid that crashed like two titanic fists into the Atlantic Ocean. The impact of these two pieces tore the crust of the Earth, allowing large parts of the magma from the Earth to come into the ocean. Atlantis and Mu, 133,000 years ago, or 31,000 years. There are conflicts about this date. Contact Report 70. There are few myths or fables that capture the imagination of man more than the story of ancient Atlantis. See Contact Report 70. If it really existed, what happened to it, and why is there no trace of its existence? Stories have been passed down for centuries about the huge island continent that existed between what today is called Africa and South America, a place where our forefathers lived in a society even more advanced than ours and traveled the stars. As an example of how Pleiadian technology can change fable to fact, here is the true story of Atlantis and our connection to it. After the great exodus to the planets in the Beta Centauri area and the destruction of life on Earth, there was a span of 700 years when travelers avoided coming here. The only life to be found was a few scattered tribes of brown-skinned humans who lived in primitive huts. They were the original Earth inhabitants, who were still very underdeveloped, and were of no interest to the star travelers. Gone was the technology of the great society of Pelican that had raised the consciousness of man to new heights. The Earth had fallen into a time of darkness and despair. Atlant brings a large group of people from the Barnard star to settle on Earth. These were the sons of the daughters of the society that was built by Pelican. These people create the society on Atlantis. The settlements of Atlantis enjoyed peace for about 1,800 years. However, the peace of Atlantis was threatened by some scientists. Contact Report 70 states, then, however, again some scientists exalted themselves, whipped up by power lust, and tried to snatch up control for themselves. Their highest leader was the scientist, Eris, who was also called the Barbarian. Eris was an E that made war against Atlantis. The people rose up against these scientists before they could do any more harm. Through an accomplice, the scientists obtained possession of spaceships and fled into the space-time shifted regions of Beta Centauri, see Alpha Centauri BB. Eris came back to Earth about 13,000 years ago after being driven off of the Earth. Atlantis and Lemuria timeline 133,000 years ago. Atlant comes to Earth from the Barnard Star. 1,800 years of peace. Scientists stir up war and are forced to leave the Earth, and they flee to Beta Centauri 115,000 years ago. 113,000 years ago, Eris comes back from Beta Centauri to stir up trouble. Destruction of Atlantis and Lemuria. Large gap now historically with little information. Perhaps 100,000 years as the Earth recovers from the war. Eris the 11th is murdered by his son Jehuvan. Jehuvan ruled the Earth until 3,660 years ago. Let himself be called as the creator. Jehuvan was murdered by his son Jehav 340 years into his father's reign. Jehav megalomaniacal like his father Jehuvan, he let himself be proclaimed as creator, and celebrated as such. Arusam murdered his father Jehav. Arusam wanted to take the power that his father had. However, his younger brothers Ta and Salam stopped him. Arusam had 72,000 followers. However, his younger brothers gathered people that would oppose Arusam. The forces of Ta and Salam forced Arusam off of the Earth. However, Arusam secretly returned with his followers to the old cubical constructions far below the Giza Plateau. This area had not been inhabited for 70,000 years. Far below the pyramids, and deep within the Earth, the followers of Arusam established themselves as the Giza intelligences. Arusam and his followers are known as the Giza intelligences by the Plagiaran. Arusam ruled until about 3010 BCE. Hen, who was called Jehovah, took over Arusam's rule. In 2080, before Christ, Hen, Jehovah, was forced out by his nephew Kamugal I. Kamugal takes over leadership of the Giza intelligences. Kamugal II takes over leadership of the Giza intelligences at about December 1976. Contact Report 9, 132-133, 132. Overcome by their thirst for power, they left their world about 13,000 years ago and returned to Earth. 133. Their highest leader was the scientist, Eris, who was also called the Barbarian. Samjasa was one of the 200 sub-leaders or scientists that worked under Eris. Samjasa mated with an Earthwoman called and Ava. See Contact Report 9 line 145. However, in the Pleiadian Mission book, Randy Winter seems to indicate that Samjasa was doing some kind of genetic experimentation at this time. In any case, an Earthwoman was mated with someone of Lyran genetics, and what resulted was a something that Samjasa called an atom. The contact note says that the descendant of this act was of male sex and a human being of good form. Samjasa called him Adam, which was a word meaning Earth human being. The Pleiadian Mission book states that this Adam was blonde and stood 16 feet tall. The origin of humans on Earth are the offspring of star travelers who mated with wild primitive humans that were here on Earth. See Contact Report 7. The following verses are taken from Contact Report 7. Contact Report 7, 119-120, 119, but they are all equally the product of the celestial sons, that is, they were begotten of them, just like the still existing Earth races. 120, the celestial sons or star travelers, as we will call our ancestors, were native to various planets of stars in another space-time configuration or far away from the Sol system, where the planets were fundamentally different climatically. Consequently, they also produced other races that were able to adapt themselves to the climate from the very beginning. Contact Report 7, 155, 155. The extraterrestrials that came in the past were very diverse in their size, ranging from 50 centimeters to 12 meters tall, 39 feet. The smallest ancestors of the Plagiaran extraterrestrials were 50 centimeter high, while the largest and most vicious ones reached to 12 meters. A centimeter is equal to about 0.39 inches. So these extraterrestrials that were 50 centimeters were about 19 inches tall. 1 meter is equal to about 3.28 feet. Therefore, the largest extraterrestrials' ancestors of the Plagiaran were over 39 feet tall. The differences in the height of the extraterrestrial humans are because of the gravity of the planet that they are on. 122. The heights of their bodies were also different because, depending on the gravity of the respective planet. Contact Report 9, 142-143, 142. In a forbidden manner and secretly, they went out and caught wild earth creatures and mutations who were distant descendants of former human beings from cosmic space. 143. Wild and beautiful female beings were tamed and mated with by the sub-leaders who called themselves Sons of Heaven. 134. Each, according to his own race, created mutated beings, completely new forms of life, who were of dwarf-like stature, gigantic or animal-like outline. For the events of Atlantis and Lemuria, Pelagon came to the Earth from the Plagiaran system 150,000 years ago. Pelagon built up a large civilization on Earth that lasted 10,000 years. A tremendous world war destroyed most of the Earth. Some people escaped to a nearby star system. 7,000 years later, the descendants of the escaped people returned to the Earth. The cities of Atlantis and Mu were built on Earth after thousands of years. Power-hungry scientists started conflicts. These scientists were forced off of the Earth. The scientists driven from the Earth settled on another world. After thousands of years, these scientists returned to the Earth to attack. 113,000 years ago, Ares led the scientists that returned to attack the people of the Atlantis, and Mu. Samjasa was one of the 200 sub-leaders or scientists that worked under Ares. Samjasa mated with an Earth woman called and Ava. See Contact Report 9, line 135. This started the line of modern humans. Atlantis attacked Mu with a fleet of spacecraft, melting the entire city. The scientists of Mu converted a large asteroid into a weapon, which was crashed into the Earth. The entire Earth was devastated by this large asteroid at about 11,500 years ago. The Atom Semyas discusses the atom in Contact Report 70. See also, Science and Technology. Primary, our first molecule that became the massive spirit or spiritual energy, contains 49 atoms. Only a few people on Earth know of this. The earthly scientists had gone astray in what they considered to be atoms, but they are not. The atom is not of pure material nature, but an intermediate thing between coarse material matter and the energy of the spirit. This is a sevenfold synthesis of matter. In the structure of the atom, the 7 planes are completely different. Previously, earthly science only knew of 2 of these planes, which are the 7th and 6th planes. Now they try to explore the 5th plane because they have just become aware of it. The principle of how matter originates is very easy, but it cannot be revealed at this time. Every kind of energy can be changed into solid matter. It is only necessary to bundle the energy strongly together in highly concentrated ways in order for it to be converted into solid matter. This causes the elementary components of solid matter to be generated as neutrons, protons, and electrons. From these subatomic particles are formed into atoms and then into a variety of chemical compounds, from which their 3 different aggregation states form the solid outer wrap of matter. The High Council Pleasurean have developed a great alliance with semi-spiritual creatures in the Andromeda star system. I suppose the beings on the High Council would be considered to be at the pedal level. It was decided that these beings in the Andromeda star system there be called the High Council, and the advice of these beings would be followed not only by the Pleasurean but also their allies. The Andromedan High Council act as consultants to the Pleasurean Federation, who are under no obligation to follow such given advice if they so choose. The following are decisions influenced by the High Council. Information on hoax Apollo 11 mission is to be withheld. In Contact 240 conveys advice to Billy from the High Council about why the release of the very sensitive hoax Apollo 11 moon landing information could endanger him, the group members, the mission, and could even cause warlike actions. The High Council stated that Billy might be murdered by members of the United States Secret Service if they were to release the information about the hoax Apollo 11 moon landings too soon. The information about the hoax Apollo 11 moon landings were finally made public in 2004. Institution of the Peace Meditation. In the spring of 1984, the High Council instituted something called the Peace Meditation to benefit Earth. Included in this effort will be everyone on ERA and many members from the Federation, who total will comprise more than 3.5 billion humans. Destruction of the tomb of Jmanuel. The original tomb of Jmanuel was destroyed by direction of the High Council as described in Contact Report 213. Quetzal describes the reason for the destruction of the tomb in the following: the fact that the tomb, respectively the tomb cave, is sought for corresponds to the truth, but the correct site wasn't found because some time ago I had destroyed this by order of the High Council, and to be sure, completely, by what means also the hillside collapsed and buried everything. The reason for this was so that no new Christian cult site could arise from this. German is the best language for Billy's written material. In Contact 241 it states the following: the German language is the only one of the Earth peoples that can fully extensively clarify and explain the comprehensive teachings of the Spirit to the full extent with all required words and terms and word combinations, as is possible in no other language of the Earth peoples. The Golden Age or Age of Aquarius. Contact Report 9, 165-170, 165. It treats of the Age of Aquarius, also called the Golden Age. 166. In this respect I must first explain the religious interpretations concerning this epoch are wrong. 167. A certain irresponsible fanaticism treats this as the religiously proclaimed final days. 168. By no means is this new age a final time, because in truth it brings real life. 169. This epoch enables everything to develop to highest potential, including spirit, according to Providence. 170. But it will take many centuries after entering the period to reach such advanced levels. Contact Report 9, 177-180, 177. The culmination of this period will come in 2028, our years. 178. The revolutionary force of this new epoch has begun in 1844, and since then the extensive alterations on Earth rush irresistibly forward. 179. The new age already demands its tribute: religious delusion, rapidly developing sciences, rampant crime, and wars of extirpation, characteristics of this time which cannot be ignored. 180. The first half of the transition period lasted 92 years, until 1936, while the Earth felt the last of the Age of Pisces, as it was called. Contact Report 10. The Human Spirit. 88. And the human is connected with this mighty spirit, with these elemental powers of existence.